everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am here today with a very important person here on campus, not only because she's a celebrated Central Penn alumni, but also because she is an established local author who is also working with our students. So, Ann Marie Knorr, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is you have a very well-established author in the area, so we want to talk about some of those books, but you're also a Central Penn alum, so we want to talk about your experience at the college, and we also want to talk about, one of our Nightly News, not only if you're a fan of the show, you know Janelle Dulac, but Jen has also been working with you over the past few months. So I want to kind of talk about that, and Jen's hopefully Jen can chime in with some of her experiences as well. So that's the goal for today's show. And of course, we are being joined by Nightly News President Janelle Dulac. Jen, as always, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's always our pleasure, Jen, to get to speak with you about a variety of different things, but in this case, work that you're actually doing in the community, which I think is fantastic. So, Ann Marie, let's go back to the beginning. So, you graduated in 1991 from Central Penn College in our mass media department, and I noticed that you were the station manager for the student radio station. So, hopefully, you can actually fill in some of the blanks here about that said student radio station, because, and this is why I want to preface this. So, let me start at the beginning. When I first started here in 2013, and Professor Larry Limpy, I believe, started in 2014 we both started around the same time. He was full-time and I was part-time until 2016. 2015 rolled around and we thought, why do we not have any type of student news organization here on campus? So one of the things that we did, once I first came on full-time, was develop the Nightly News. We started off with basically an online periodical, and we've since expanded to podcast studio, doing sports broadcasts, and we do a quarterly publication. Somebody brought up when we first started doing this podcast studio that there used to be a radio station here, that there used to be all types of equipment and the whole nine yards. And I thought that was very fascinating, because there's not much in the history books of Central Penn, if you will, which just does so happen to be celebrating our 140th anniversary last year. But I would love to know more about the radio station.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. As I was waiting, I was telling Jen, I was texting a former roommate from Central Penn, one of my best friends, that I was here on campus, and she said, "Oh, is the station still there?" Because she was also mass media. I said, "No." I said, "It's not here anymore." And she said, "Oh God, do you remember the station?" And I said, "I do, but my memory is so bad." I remember glimpses. I remember the exciting times of being able to, because it was so new when we were here, the station, and just finding these talents that we didn't know. I mean, we had students from not only just the mass media class, but from other groups and other departments that came and did shows. We had this one, it was the Jim and Rat show, and Jim was in the legal department and Rat was in the communications, but the bantering between the two of them was amazing. It was more of a comedy show between the two of them. And I remember the show was just so good because he was very much in the pop culture media. And then like Jim would bring in like his comical legal mumbo jumbo and be like, "Well, did you know that this is actually," and it was just so well played off the two of them. And then we had two gentlemen, Adam and
I won't put you on the spot for their names.
Thank you. But they did like a very much like, if anybody remembers, I mean, you guys may not, but there used to be a really popular show called the Coffee and the Jammer Show.
Of course.
Yep.
That's one of the people who I looked up to as I was getting into this industry.
They mimicked perfectly a show similar to the two of them, to the point where I actually got them on the Coffee and the Jammer Show to be interviewed. And I just remember it was a blast.
Jen, Coffee and the Jammer were DJs, morning drive DJs on a local rock station that are legendary in this area. Fortunately, I suppose, 93.5 was the station they were on, was one of the top stations in the area. And since then, 93.5 has gone through all types of changes, but they're back now, back as, the original 93.5. So just giving you a little preface, because I know that you're not necessarily from around
She's
this
just
area.
like, who
are these people?
Yeah, exactly. What is a coffee and a jam or what? and then myself, I was very much into the new wave, like the Duran Duran, all that kind of stuff. So like my show is predominantly about, the British invasion and like all of that new wave music and stuff like that. And I can't remember what my friend Tracy did, but she might have done a like more of a talk show kind of show. But like it was amazing how we had so many different topics at that station, but it was great. Central Penn was a very different school than it is today. So we had to create opportunities to engage the students. And we created my class created the first dances and stuff like that here. Yeah. And we used to do we didn't have and I'm trying to bring, we didn't have a cafeteria, but there was a communal area. And we used to at lunchtime go and set up little portable stations and play music during, just to try to get people involved. And I just remember the feeling of the group of us that did it were very, very close. Right. And it was a really good time.
I think that it's so awesome. That was definitely one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, the days of the radio station here on campus, because again, as somebody who teaches this and, we've developed this podcast studio and we, do our best to try to get, professional equipment, give them the same type of experience. It's not the same as having an over-the-air radio station where you're live all the time.
Right.
And so I may follow up with you. Maybe we do a little story about the old radio station. And obviously you would be probably one of my few contacts on that.
Well, I'll see if Tracy wants to come too, because I know she'll remember a lot too. She and I were really close together. We ran it together. So I think it would be cool to have both. We'll hook up with Tracy too. And I think she can remember things that I'm not recalling. But yeah, it was a blast.
I would absolutely
was a blast.
I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah,
well, let's kind of fast forward a little bit, back from the late 80s, early 90s here at Central Penn. So you got into mass media, and then as I look, you've had a variety of jobs focused a lot with hospitality in terms of music and live performances. Yep. So how did you get into that specific area? For example, you worked at the Whitaker Center for Science and the Arts. And for those of you who don't know, one of the premier music venues in this area is housed within the Whitaker Center. Yep. So how did you get into that line of working in terms of the live music and entertainment field?
So when I got out from Central Penn, I was just telling Jen that I loved radio. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I got a job back in Pottsville at T102 doing overnights. And then I realized...
Which doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't. And I did overnights, and I'm like, I don't like being by myself in a box. I realized that I much more got the vibe from the live in-person stuff. So fast forward, a friend of mine was looking for a roommate, so I came back down. I moved in with Dawn, and Whitaker Center was just being built, and I'm like, I need a job. I might came down here with no job. I'm like, I gotta find something. And the ticket office was looking, I'm like, well, I have experience doing that. I worked at a movie theater for a while, blah, blah, blah. So they hired me as a part-time ticket person. And I said, listen, I'm looking for a full-time gig. If anything comes up, let me know. 2 days later, the box office manager said, my assistant decided to move back home away. I need somebody. And do you want the job? No other, yes or no. And I'm like, yes. Didn't have to think twice. Yes. And the thing is you just know when I went in for the interview for the box office, I walked around and I knew in my heart, I'm like, I am meant to be here. I am going to have a full-time job. I just knew it. And then I was at the box office just for a couple months. And then the gentleman, Steve Krimpaski, who ran the performance theater, Sunoco Performance Theater, said, we need a house manager, an assistant house manager. do you want to come on over? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's where I want to be.
Absolutely.
I want to be where the music is. I want to be where the performers are. And that's how it happened. It was just being there in
Right place, the right time.
right place, right time, and just having that gut and going for it. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I try to instill in the students is that, everybody has to pay their dues. I mean, I think a lot of times students think that I'm just going to get out and somebody's going to hand me a bag full of money and my dream job. And, I try to, as much as I want people to reach for their dreams, I also have to try to explain to them, like, hey, you got to get that first job. You got to get that experience.
Yep.
And, of course, we try to give them as many opportunities as humanly possible. But, it's not always easy to link school to where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, and especially with some of those jobs that you may have to take that might not be 100% what you're looking for, but are still going to be valuable to you in the long run. So.
And it's networking. It's all about networking. It's not just about networking within school. It's about going out and experiencing things outside of campus and getting involved, because you just never know who's going to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I did promotions as well at a radio station 105.7 down here. I needed just something on the side because working the many hours I wasn't enough. I needed more music in my life, and I just did promotions, and I had a blast. I mean, I don't think here's the other thing that I would love to come into a class and tell people, because again, maybe this is something you guys do teach now, but when I was here they didn't tell us. A lot of people think that, I'm going to work at a radio station. Their thought is, I'm going to be on air, because that's what it means to work at a radio station. Like, they don't realize that there's other positions that you can get into to get your feet wet, like promotions, where, like, dude, you're going to go with the DJs. You're going to set up the gear. You're going to be the right-hand man for the day, and you're going to learn a ton of stuff. And those are the opportunities that a lot of students don't know. And those are the positions that nobody wants to take. So it's the perfect marriage that if you've got somebody who's 22, 23 coming out of school that doesn't mind working 2 or 3 random jobs because they can, that's your foot in the door right there.
I think that's a really important message for people who are around my age, because I feel like most people are, especially people who are about to graduate, are somewhere between, I have no idea what I'm about to do, or I have all of it planned out and I think I know exactly what I want. Yep. And, I can say that I'm on the other, the latter side of that spectrum. But, for the people who are on any side of it, they need to learn that is the middle ground of accepting, like, you need to kind of get on those stepping stones to be able to get where you want to go, and where you think you want to go might not even be where you end up.
It's really interesting. I'm in my grad program right now for my PhD, which I'm now in my final semester of classwork before I move to dissertation. Anyway, I'm in a class with master's degree students, and every single one of them said that they went to grad school because they didn't know what to do when they got out of their undergrad. Mm-hmm. And I just want to take these people and say, why? Look, I am obviously an advocate for higher education. Yep. I highly encourage the right people to continue on their education and go to grad school. But I'd also say it is not for somebody who doesn't know what they want to do.
Right.
In fact, you're really kind of wasting time and money when you could be doing that entry-level position. Yeah, it might not pay $60,000, $70,000 a year, but you're never going to get that $60,000 or $70,000 a year position without the experience that you have.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I don't want to be like their parent or something, but I almost feel bad for them that they're not trying to find something more. And again, obviously, huge advocate of higher education. I'm not saying that I disagree with them going back. I just think that they're going back for the wrong reasons.
Right. And there's also, it's the whole looking outside of the box kind of thing, is because, broadcasting, like, would anybody think that you can have a video broadcasting job at a casino? Well, yeah, because think about, they're broadcasting the horse races and things like that. Like, there's opportunities in such unique places for mass media and communications. You just have to think outside that box and try to think, okay, where can I go to at least get a footholding and started?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I want to, while we still have some time here on the podcast, talk about some of your work outside of some of your positions. So right now you're working for BRP Entertainment, talent buyer. But in addition to that, obviously it seems like you've always worked several jobs. You're also the co-owner of R.A. Fisher Authors, and you have published 2 fantasy novels. Tell me a little bit more about these 2 books and how you got into writing and where this came from, because sort of the fantasy genre seems a little bit outside of, what your day job is.
Right. Well, I mean, I've always been a storyteller, like all my life, like from little. Like I love to tell a good story. But these novels, this trilogy, is actually the brainchild of my wife, Rachel Fisher, and she was very much into D&Ds and role-playing games and stuff like that. And we came across, when we were cleaning out, we came across this box of old character sheets, and she was telling me about this story that she had created a campaign from over 20 years ago. And I was like, this is amazing. You should really write this. And she's like, well, will you help me? And I'm like, well, yeah, I like to tell a good story. And so we started writing it. It took us 10 years to write the first book.
Wow.
10 years. And you know what? I'm so happy that it did, because the book that we thought about 10 years ago, well, actually, it's 12 years now. So it's 10 years from when in 2019 when we released it. And I'm glad it did, because the book back then is not the book that we have now. And it's grown so much over those years. But that's kind of how we did it. And then she and I sat down and we figured out what our weaknesses are, what our strengths are, and like she's amazing at writing dialogue and battle scenes, and I'm really good at the details, the small little intricate things, and that's kind of how the two of us we merged together. I've always been into the nerdy stuff. I love sci-fi and fantasy and all that kind of stuff, which it's just amazing to me being able to just create a whole different world, and that's what we did with Euphrasia. And I'm hooked. I'm really hooked.
I think it's so unique. Now, can you share with us a little bit about the publishing process?
Sure.
How did you first get, so you say it took you 10 years, but tell us a little bit more about why it took that long.
Writer's block. And just changes, and you go through all the emotions of, oh, why am I doing this? Nobody's gonna want it. Nobody's gonna care. And then to the, well, no, everybody should know. And it's just inner dialogue in your head that you have to get through. But then once you have that book in front of you, at least that rough draft, and you hand it to your alpha or beta reader, and they read it and then go, yeah, this is pretty dope. This is sick. We need to know more about this story. That kind of fuels you to be like, okay, we're gonna go on. And that's how it took. Why it took so long was just getting outside of your own head. But then once you have that book, and you have to go through the process of, you've got to find your alpha and beta readers, which is just basically people that you trust to give you the honest opinion of what's good, what's not good, and you move on.
What's really interesting about that is, and I'm sure Jen can kind of understand where I'm coming from here, I think that's some of the value. Of course, there's a lot of different reasons why higher education is wonderful, but I think that's some of the value of being in higher education, is that honestly from your professors and certainly other people around the college, you're going to get that feedback that you might not get once you leave higher education.
Yep.
Because, for example, Jen is working at her internship right now, and I'm sure most of the feedback that you get is probably pretty positive, and almost to the point where you wish they would give you more critical feedback. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I feel like that happens in a lot of places. However, I tend to ask, like, what could I do? What can I do for you that would make this, that extra 10%? And sometimes I don't even ask that question, and I try to figure it out on my own, just to kind of please, not necessarily be a people pleaser, but just to think of, like, what can I do to just put a smile on somebody's face or make their day a little easier or something like that. And I've enjoyed my time at my internship. It's been a really great experience, and I've learned a lot, especially when it comes to quality control, which is something I'm sure is extremely important in writing a book and publishing it.
Yeah.
Well, and Jen, while we're on that note, one of the things and kind of how we got to know Ann Marie is you have, over the course of the last year or so, been working with Ann Marie to help sort of promote her book. So tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, so Anne Marie and I got connected through Kristen Fike and through Professor Miller. And so in that time, we had a staff meeting with multiple other people who were volunteering their time. And we discussed different ways that we could potentially promote the book and promote our social media pages. So we created posts that were related to different, like, when it was going to be released, events that were coming up, reviews of the book, how people can follow us, subscribe to our email list, different ways that we can get people engaged, but also quotes from authors that we aspire to be like, and also birthday posts for Anne Marie and Rachel.
Awesome. I always love the opportunity for my students, and I think it's wonderful that you have taken advantage of these opportunities with Anne Marie, and hope that that's something that, even after you're done here at Central Penn College in just a couple of months, that's something you can continue to do. So Anne Marie, as we sort of move into the final piece, not only do you have the first 2 books in the trilogy that have already been released, you are actually working on another project, a comic that is slated to be released December 2022. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, yeah. So before we get there, so the books, just want to throw that out there, it's a trilogy. It's the Raven-Nalo trilogy. So there's one more book that now we're trying to get through on that.
And how's that process coming?
Oh, I would love to say great, but I mean, it's there. The outline's done. We're about to sit down and start banging it out. We know what we have to wrap up and finish. So, so that's the process there. So in addition to finishing the 3rd book in the Raven-Nalo trilogy, where Rachel's working on Synergy, and that's a comic book from not even anything related to the Raven-Nalo. It's a sci-fi comic, and I'm coming in more of like the producer. So I'm in charge of like marketing and advertising and the business side of that. But it's coming along really well.
Now, is this going to be like a serial comic book?
Yes.
And it's forgive me for not knowing more about how comic books are released, but is that a monthly thing that it comes out, or is it?
No, it's going to be like every year, a series. Every year a book will come out.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's right now the story has 5. It's planning to have 5 parts to it.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it'll be over a 5-year span. So
It
so
is.
you're just lining yourself up with a ton of work here over the next half of a decade.
I like to be busy.
Well, hey,
I like to keep busy.
I think busyness it can be a bad thing if you're too busy and you don't
Yeah.
have time to sort of reflect and relax. But at the same time, I think that's part of what makes life, that brings us joy. And, part of one of the classes I'm in, we talk about motivation and how, we can proceed through motivating ourselves to want to be better people. And I think that something like this is probably motivation for you to get up and maybe do your day job because you enjoy creating books and the comic, and just that behind the scenes marketing piece of it seems to be so important to you. I just think it's so wonderful, the approach that you take here, and
Thank
you're clearly unbelievably busy. Well, okay. Tell us a bit more, without spoiling anything, about the trilogy, the Raven-Nalo trilogy.
So the book trilogy follows, obviously, Raven, and she is a half elf. And now, for anybody that likes D&D and role playing, they'll understand some of the terminology, and then I'll try to explain it a little bit. But she wants to become what's called a rogue, just like her father, and she is so good at it that she's offered to come to this specialized camp to train to be a protector of the mortal realm. So while she's there training with a few others, there's a demon that comes from the abyss realm. So there's multiple realms in our world. And he comes and finds a human necromancer in the mortal realm that they partner with, and they cause all kinds of chaos and destruction. And Raven has to come out of this camp along with these others that have trained and find a way to put aside differences, but and figure out how to protect their world and stop the destruction from these partners. And then, I won't go into everything that happens then.
We
But
have
then
to keep them guessing.
Exactly. But then in book 2 picks up right at the end. I mean, immediately at the end, because so book 1 ends with and Jen's read the books, a very what kind of twist and cliffhanger. So book 2 picks up right then and there. And then during book 2, basically Raven is faced with this decision of, does she try to chase after and track down the more of these people that are trying to hurt her world and defy everybody? So basically, if she goes and she follows her gut to go do this, she could be banned. And so that she has to kind of weigh her options of what's more important, like going into this to chase down these people and also find someone that she lost, or does she just let things happen as they're going to happen and unfold? I think but this second book has been very hard to explain with it because you can't. It's
right, you
so
don't want to give too
tied.
much away.
It's based on the first book very heavily.
Exactly. So it's that's kind of. I think that the best way to explain it is.
Now, Jen, is this a genre that you gravitate to? Is that why you've enjoyed this experience?
It's not even necessarily the genre. I think it's more so the writing and the age range that the main character is in. If I feel like I can relate to them on a personal level, then I tend to really eat up a book much quicker. And the stories that Ann Marie and Rachel have written are really spectacular. I really enjoyed them. And like Ann Marie said, they leave the story on a cliffhanger each book. So in the last one, again, don't want to spoil it, but something I did not expect happens, and I'm already ready to read the third one. And I was glad that I had the second book already, so I can just be like, oh, I gotta find out what happens. I could just flip open to the first page again. But now I have to wait, just like everybody else, which sucks.
Well, Ann Marie, first of all,
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. And I genuinely appreciate a alumna, Central Penn alumna, who is a established author in this area. And of course, I know that this is a collaborative process with your partner, but I still think it's so cool that you are, an author and your books are so very unique. And I'm so glad that you're being successful doing this as part of a passion project. It's not your day job, but it's something that's still very important to you and helps create who you are. So I just appreciate your
that.
time today as a Central Penn alum.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I just thought it was the perfect connection to be able to do this because I love giving back, and and our books are, like Jen said, are for late high school through college and early adult. So I'm like, this would have been the perfect opportunity, and everyone here has been so gracious and so helpful on, again, opening opportunities and paths to be able to allow Rachel and I to just keep going forward. So
awesome. Well, we appreciate your time today, and we wish you the best of luck on the book, and keep an eye out for the comic that's coming out in December of 2022. And Jen, not only thank you so much for being here, but thank you so much for jumping on board and giving Ann Marie a hand on some of the social media pieces, not only getting you some experience, but also helping a local author.
Thank you. I've had a lot of fun doing it, and I've been glad to be able to share some of the stuff that I've learned from my classes with other people. So,
well, I appreciate it. Well, just one final plug. You can go to rafisherauthors.com to purchase these books. You also have autographed copies on there, which I'm a huge fan of. And you can also find the books on Facebook and Instagram at R.A. Fisher Authors. That's RAFISCHER Authors through not only the website, but through Facebook and Instagram. So I highly encourage you to check this out, learn more about it, and hey, maybe pick up a copy or two. So, well, Ann Marie, again, thank you for being here. It's much appreciated, and I am going to follow up with you about sort of reliving the history of Central Penn Radio, because frankly, there's no one on this campus that even, not that they don't remember that it existed, but just doesn't have any information on it.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to follow up with you about
Please
that.
do.
a relic.
We have to know more about this.
Yeah,
We got to know more about the history of radio here.
I'll have to see if I have pictures too. So that'll be.
I would love that.
I'll have to see if we can dig some up. So.
Fantastic. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast for local author and Central Penn alum Ann Marie Knorr and the Nightly News President Janelle Dulac. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Brant Ellsworth, Assistant Professor of Humanities at Central Penn College. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Nightly News Correspondent Jamie Harmon with a Spring 2022 episode of the Nightly News Brief. This news podcast features audio versions of stories from our student reporters. Articles by Sarah Whitmire, Dylan Bowman, Molly Peters, Michael Lear-Olympi, and Paul Miller are featured in today's episode. The Nightly News Media Club has brought home 3 Student Journalism Awards home to Central Penn. A single story, a series of stories, and a podcast won honorable mention in this year's Pennsylvania News Media Association Student Keystone Media Awards contest. Central Penn won in the Division II competition for colleges and universities with fewer than 10,000 students. Professor Michael Lear-Olympi, co-advisor of the Nightly News Media Club, said, quote, "It's a wonderful honor and resume builder for our students to win distinction in the statewide competition. Our students are talented and they are prepared through intensive, hands-on focused education to enter the communications field, corporate communications or journalism with their Central Penn degrees." End quote. Layers of Community, a series of stories spotlighting diversity among Central Penn faculty and staff, was one of the winning entries. Ashley Riekert, Janelle Dulac, Jamie Harmon, and Alexis Shugart wrote segments for the series, which was a collaboration by the Nightly News, the President's Commission on Diversity and Inclusion, and the Institutional Diversity and Equality Committee. A story on Duck Donuts CEO Betsy Ham, who delivered the 2022 Central Penn Business Partner of the Year keynote address, written by recent corporate communications graduate Leslie Heimball, was another winner. Heimball and Media Club co-advisor Paul Miller shared honors for the Nights at the Movies, a series of podcasts in which the two discuss flicks and directors. The Nightly News is proud of these awards and will strive to continue producing quality news to be in competition this year. The Nightly News Media Club released its 150th podcast episode on May 10th, featuring Central Penn College President Linda Fedrizzi Williams. This milestone episode has been over 6 years in the making, as Episode 1 aired on February 9th, 2016. Fedrizzi Williams was also featured on Episode 100 on August 27th, 2019. Since then, many important initiatives have occurred at the college, including the rollout of several certificate programs, an increased focus on student support, and stressing affordability for our students. The Nightly News was established by Professor Paul Miller and Michael Lear-Olympi in 2015, offering an outlet for student reporters to cover events on campus, important people in the community, and successful alumni of the institution. The podcast has been another consistent aspect of the club, releasing 5 podcasts per term and generating on average 100 listeners per episode. Miller said, quote, "One really important thing about podcasts is to be consistent over a long period of time, so that you can build your audience. We have had tremendous gains in listeners over the past 18 months." End quote. The episode is available on the club's YouTube channel and SoundCloud channels. With a set of games nearly 6 months in the making, Central Penn College baseball had a night that they will remember for the rest of their lives. April 22nd was the game circled on the calendar. With a doubleheader at FNB Field on City Island, while the Knights had played 6 previous games at the venue, none were like this one. The Knights swept the doubleheader against Williamson Trade, 16-0 in Game 1 and 11-1 in Game 2. But the story here was the crowd, the ambiance, and the emotion of the entire evening. The crowd, an all-time record for attendance at a Knights baseball game, was estimated to be about 500 throughout the day. Parents, alumni, friends, faculty, and staff were among the people who came to show support for all the hard work the Knights put up this season. In addition, Nightly News Hall of Famer Brian Christiana was on hand for on-field entertainment between innings. Livening up the crowd during the downtime of the games, Christiana works as an on-field host for the Lancaster Barnstormers and brought the energy that kept the crowd engaged throughout the evening. The Pizza Corner is all the rave on campus right now. One look at the Central Penn app, students' feed will prove that the new pizza shop on Valley Road across B Street from ATEC is a huge hit among students. Students were eager to share their opinions with the campus community, and the app quickly began to light up with pictures of students enjoying their meals from their new restaurant and glowing comments about the food and the place, which opened around the beginning of the spring term. When you walk through the front door, the smell of fresh pizza cooking up in the oven greets you, along with the warm smiles of the workers eager to serve you. The menu is extensive, offering salads, hot and cold subs, wraps, appetizers, strombolis, calzones, and of course, pizza, with great deals such as 2 large pizzas for $21.99. A single slice of plain pizza will run you only about $2.25, so be sure to grab a slice and try it for yourself. The Pizza Corner, which was previously called the Valley Road Diner, was bought last spring and has undergone remodeling and transformation throughout the year for a grand opening, which was a huge success among the campus community. The folks at the Pizza Corner are happily at your service. As the hype calmed from the spring term's action-packed CPC film series entry, Olympus Has Fallen, attention turned to a different film on the horizon. This term's presenter was a real treat to the campus as a second student presenter in the film series run. Nightly News Media Club president Janelle Dulac took up the reins to share one of her favorite films of all time, Hairspray. Before the movie's showing, it was clear Dulac had a real passion for the 2007 film. When asked why she chose the film and why she saw it as special, Dulac didn't hesitate to answer. Dulac said, quote, "In the film series, we have never done a musical, which is a very particular genre and an underestimated genre. But also those people who love it are extremely dedicated. So what I really wanted to do was prove the value that the medium of musicals has." End quote. Dulac explained her further connections to the genre and Hairspray in particular. Dulac said, quote, "The original Hairspray, which was released in 1988, was directed and created by John Walters. And anybody who knows me knows I'm obsessed with John Walters. I just fell in love with the idea of trying to decipher where all the pieces connect within the different movies. Although it's the same movie, there are many differences and nuances." End quote. The Central Penn showing of Hairspray drew a crowd of about 30. Though musicals aren't often the go-to for many viewers, it was a great feather on the series cap and added to the overall flavor of cinematic variety on campus. Dulac went on to say, quote, "The main thing for people to take away from this film is a discussion of political correctness, which is something that John Walters goes back and forth in all his films. You just have to genuinely accept that people are weird. Everyone has their niche. It is an incredible message that only comes through a John Walters film." End quote. The CPC film series will return in the summer term when the Dean of Engagement, Adrian Thoman, will present the 1987 film Dirty Dancing on August 5th in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. This has been Nightly News Correspondent Jamie Harmon with the Spring 2022 episode of the Nightly News Brief.